Hello everybody and welcome back to Mastering Avantra. Today's topic is all about the new workflow engine that was introduced in version 21.11 and above. Specifically today, I'm going to talk through the new concept called the step library. And this allows you to create reusable components of workflow actions that you can reuse within your workflow executions across different workflows and for different scenarios. So I'm going to show you a very simple example today of how we're going to build up an OS patching example using the step library and then build it into a workflow. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'm going to show you the Avantra system that I'm working on. So the first thing I want to show you is the version. So if you go into the help menu and into about, you'll see that I'm running our latest version, which is 21.11.4. And the system I'm running on is this system over here. So this is called gdev-ul-amk, and as you can see, it's running Ubuntu 20.04. Okay, so we've got an Ubuntu system with an Avantra 21.11 installation using the latest versions. Now, what I've also got over here is the operating system level access. So I want to show you manually what I'm planning on doing today. So let me show you the system. So I'm going to run a hostname CTL, and that shows you that I'm running Ubuntu 20.04, LTS, and all that fun stuff about the machine. Normally, if we were doing updates, we would do sudo apt get update to refresh the cache. And so it's going to ask for my password, which I'm going to provide now. So give me one moment. So I provide my password, and it does a refresh of its own cache, just like this. And you'll see it'll go off and do its usual cache refreshes, pretty standard stuff. And then if it found updates, the next thing we would execute is upgrade. And we put a -y. The -y here giving us a silent upgrade. So if it finds upgrades, it will simply do the execution. So here we go, we do a Y. If there were upgrades, it would complete them. So nice and simple. These are the three commands that I'm going to show you how to do within the step libraries today. The first one gets you more information about the box itself. The second one invalidates and updates the cache for the package manager. And the third one here just simply does an upgrade for any available packages that have updates. So let's go ahead and get started. So if we go into the configuration menu within Avantra and into automations, you'll now see there are two new options here on the left. We workflows, which is where we define the overall workflows, and we have this concept of the step library. Now the step library is a library you will build up throughout the lifetime of your Avantra system of reusable components that you can build into your workflows. It's really powerful. Here at Avantra, we also will be providing steps available to our enterprise customers as part of add-ins and other fun stuff as well, like system copies, system refreshes, and all that kind of fun stuff. So we will provide them within the step library as well. So let's go ahead and build our first step. So I go into new, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to say Ubuntu package manager cache refresh. The namespace, the one I tend to use is com.avantra.mastering Avantra, but obviously use your own company naming conventions for your namespaces. This can be whatever you like. So we hit create, just like that. And now I'm into the step library composition area. So I'm going to make this full screen just so it's easier for you guys to see. So over here on the left, I have the information I provided, the name, the namespace. I can assign it to a specific customer if I'm using multi-tenancy. I have a version, how many times have I saved this, and I have a description. So this one is going to be refresh the cache of the OS package manager. I also have parameters here. So do I want to take anything into the step or provide anything out? I'll come back to that later, but I'm actually not going to use that in this particular one. And then I have a third option here, which is to test. So once I'm writing code over here, I want somewhere to test this. So I'm going to test it on the machine I'm currently working on, which is dev-ul-amk. So let's go ahead and get started with building up our command. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a constant. So this is standard JavaScript. So if you're used to writing custom checks in Avantra, this is going to be pretty standard for you. And there are some slight tweaks. So instead of using check dot to reference the global variables, you'll use action dot. But I'll come to that in a moment. But I'm going to create a constant variable here. It doesn't change. Just called os command. And I'm going to set that equal to the first command we said we wanted to run. So sudo apt get update. So that is the command we wanted to run and that we ran over here earlier. You see it here, sudo apt get update, to actually trigger the cache refresh. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to want to execute that on the actual operating system itself. And I always surround these with a try catch, just because, you know, it's good to ensure you're putting a bit of resiliency into how you're doing your interactions with the operating system level. Let's say you don't have permissions. Let's say something goes wrong. You don't want to just bail out of your code. You want to handle those errors gracefully. So we'll say var command result is equal to os.exec, and I'm going to say os_command. Now, that is very familiar to anybody who's written custom checks before in this space. This is not unusual. I am going to add one other argument here to the os.exec, purely because I know from experience that sometimes the cache updates for apt-get can take a little time. And there's a 30-second standard timeout on os.exec, and sometimes it goes beyond this. So I'm going to put 180,000 seconds, which I think is about 3 minutes. So I'm doing the execution of that command, and if I have an error, then we'll handle that in a few moments. So then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to say if command result exists. Always start by checking it exists. If it's not null, oops, and if the command result dot get exit code is equal to 0, then I know everything worked fine. So this is the positive outcome, as it were. Otherwise, we've got issues. So then we're going to have to say, okay, now I need to provide a little bit more information about potentially something that went wrong, or something along those lines. We'll come back to error handling in a moment. And then finally, we want to provide feedback from this step to the overall workflow of the status. Oops. So, and I'll talk you through that in a minute. So the basic building blocks are here. We have the command, we're executing it at the OS level, and then we're going to provide some feedback to the rest of the workflow. It's quite a simple thing. I can even execute this right now. And the nice thing is, I'm not saving and sending to the agent. I can just execute this as we go. And broadly, it's saying, yeah, that's successful. And this would work, but let's challenge ourselves to be a bit more graceful in how we're running this stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do at the top here is I'm going to create a variable called execution successful. And I'm going to assume a negative, because we only want to provide feedback that actually we've successfully executed if we've actually successfully executed. So execution successful is assumed to be false. And if we come down to the if block where we said everything worked fine, let's just set that to true. So we know that, it's all good if we got there. And then down the bottom, we need to provide that information back to the output. So we say action.set success, and we'll put the name of this variable in there, just like this. So there we go, execution successful. So now let's test it again. Classic computer science, keep building it up bit by bit, keep testing it, make sure you're getting the responses you'd expect. And hey, success is still true. So, we're getting to this point over here. And if we wanted to test if we got this wrong, you know what? Make a deliberate error here. Let's change the name of this command, and look, success goes to false. But we don't have a lot of information about what went wrong. So let's put some error information in here. So we're going to have another variable called execution result message. I'm going to start out with that being blank. And I'm going to add one, so that's the high level message, and I'm going to add one more called execution result detail. And I'm going to let that be blank as well. Because there's a high level message and then there's details as well. As you can see over here, these are standard outputs from these actions. Hey, what's the high level message, or what was the detail of what actually happened? So here, under the successful one, I'm going to say that the execution result message is equal to command result.get out. And that's not get out as in go away, that's get out as in get the output. So here we have, we're going to provide the information about what happened into this variable. And then finally down the bottom, we're going to set the message of the action to be the result message, just like that. And actually, let's just execute that and see what happens. So now we should be able to see that we get a success true, and we get some information in the message. But actually, that's a lot of information. It feels like it's too much for that variable. So actually, I'm going to change this slightly, and I'm going to say, let's take this out, let's say execution successful, like that, and I'm going to say execution result detail is equal to the detail, like that. So, and then finally down here, I'm going to not set the message, I'm going to set the details. So that's the variable we'll see over here. So now, let me just quickly recap where we've come to. So we have three variables. We have a Boolean, which tells us whether the action we're going through has been successful or not. We have the high level message. Hey, what's the top line message here? Were things successful? Did we get what we needed? And then we've all the detail, and the detail is where you put like literally as much detail as you can. So if you need to audit this later, if you need to debug it later, that's where you put it. And then if my result, or if my command executed successfully, I'm updating the Boolean to say, yep, we're good. I'm giving the high level message saying execution was successful, and I'm putting the detail to be the output of the command that was executed at the OS level. And then finally at the bottom, I'm just putting those into the output so they can be viewed by the workflow later on. So once we execute this as a test run, you'll see that we get success is true, message execution successful. Oh, those details aren't right. I'll call it a deliberate error, but I actually had the wrong. So the variable name was execution result detail, and I forgot to set that down here to the right one. So let's execute a test run, and now we should see the message say execution successful, and the details should contain all those details of exactly what the command did. So that's quite cool. I want to put in a couple more pieces of error handling. So what happens if the os.exec fails? So I'm just going to put in some basic stuff here, so our execution successful is already false. So we can say execution result message is equal to, and I'm going to do this in some cool JavaScript notation, and I'm going to copy an error message I prepared previously, which is execution of the OS command, and it'll fill that in at runtime. Command failed with the error below, and we're going to say execution result detail is equal to the error. So that's the error that was caught here by the try catch. So that's just some nice error handling. And then let's come down here. And at this point, we should ask ourselves, hey, what are the typical reasons that this would fail? Why would this not work out? And the most common one that I've seen is that the user in question that's running this, so this is the agent user, doesn't actually have the permissions to use sudo without a password. So that's the error message I'm going to provide here. And I'll just copy and paste it for the sake of brevity, which is error executing the command OS command. Does the agent user have the right sudo privileges to execute this command without a password? So that should be enough of a hint for anybody who's debugging this later on to see exactly what went wrong. We also want to provide more information in the detail, but let's only do that if command result is something that we can work with. So let's copy this if statement here. So if we have a valid command result, then we can set the execution detail to be command result.get out, like that. Otherwise, let's just say, look, like this, no detailed error was available, like that. So what we've done here is we've built up a method of invalidating the cache and updating the cache for the package manager, but we've surrounded it with a lot of error checking and thinking around hints that we would want to provide to somebody who's using the end state workflow in case something goes wrong. So let's go ahead and execute this. So we execute our test run and we should see something similar to what we already had. So we get our success is true, execution successful, and all the information. Let's screw up the operating system command deliberately, and we say error executing the command sudo apt-get update. Does the agent user have the right sudo privileges? Okay, fine. And there's the detail. Sudo, a terminal is required to read the password. Okay, great. So yeah, so I think we're in a good state with this one. So I'm comfortable now that we're getting everything we need out of it. Let's hit apply. And you see here as well, we have this version number. So every time you hit apply and you save your step, the version number is incremented. So we get some nice versioning going on here as well. So that's our first command. So that was the command sudo apt-get update. We now need one for hostname CTL and sudo apt-get upgrade -y. Now, the great thing about how I wrote this one is that it's ridiculously reusable. Now, if I wanted to, I could come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to add an input parameter that is OS command, let's say, like that, and give it a default value and make this entire step dynamic for how I would call an operating system command. But I don't want to do that in this case. I want to keep this example simple, but you could use parameters here, and it would be action.input. The name of input is what you would use here to actually access that parameter. And I'll show you what that documentation is in a moment. But I think we're good here. So I'm going to be happy with this. I'm going to copy and paste. Actually, I'll show you how to do it here. So we have our step library here. You see it here. We have our cache refresh. I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to call it Ubuntu package manager update. So copy, here it is. And instead of apt-get update, I'm going to do upgrade. Actually, let's call it upgrade so it's a little bit clearer what it is. And we'll say trigger package updates using the package manager, like that. And all I've had to do here is sudo apt-get upgrade -y. Don't forget the -y, because otherwise it'll try and prompt the user. And we can actually test this one as well. Always test it just to make sure it works the way you'd expect. And yep, so execution successful. It does or attempts the upgrade, similar to the message we saw when we tried this ourselves over here. Okay, so that's that step done. And let's copy that step again, and we'll say Ubuntu get host details, and copy. Here we're just going to have the command be hostname CTL, like that. And I'm missing a like that. I know I don't need the timeout on hostname CTL. I don't expect that one to go far or to take a long time. I also know that I'm not using sudo, so I'm going to update this error message over here. And that's it. So let's try testing that one. Oops, I forgot to select my system. Hit execute test run. Execution successful. There's the detail. And I just want to update this, which is get host level information. Like that. Okay, so now I have my 3 commands: hostname CTL, sudo apt-get update, and sudo apt-get upgrade -y. So I have all of them represented as steps within my step library. Let's do the final step and build it into a workflow. So I go to my workflows tab and I hit new. And I'm going to say Ubuntu OS patching in com.avantra.mastering Avantra, like that. Hit create. And now I'm presented with the new workflow composition area. So here I can have workflow inputs. So what information am I going to pass into the workflow? So let's do that first. I'm very simply going to pass in the system that I'm going to be using. So let's just do system like this, and I'm going to set the default system to be my local system. I don't have to set a default, but in this case I am. So I'm going to have that. So system comes in like that, and now I get to add my workflow steps. So let's do new workflow steps. So let's say get host info. So that was the first step I ran. And in here, we'll find it in here, Ubuntu get host details, like that. So I'm going to pass in the system that I want to run on. And on failure, I want to stop. Look, if I can't get information about the host, I probably shouldn't continue anyway. So then we'll refresh package manager cache, and we'll use the Ubuntu package manager cache refresh, like that. And again, I'm going to pass in the system. And if I can't refresh the cache, look, I may as well stop as well. So let's do a stop there too. And then finally, I want to trigger OS patching like this. And we'll do Ubuntu package manager upgrade. And so just like that. Now we'll pass in, and if we fail, we'll stop as well. So just like that. So trigger OS level patching for Ubuntu. Okay, so hit apply. So now we've defined our workflow end to end. Let's try it. Let's execute it. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to execute on my system, gdev and hit run. And so now what it's doing is it's sent the definition of our workflow to our host, and now it's actually doing the execution. And just like that, it's done. So 7 seconds and 5 milliseconds, it's done end to end. It got the host info, refreshed the package manager cache, and triggered the OS patching. Let's look at this in a bit of a larger screen. So we have, I just hit refresh over here, and you'll see this one here is finished. And I can access all the information, which is fantastic from an audit trail standpoint. So there's the output of the hostname CTL. There's the output of the cache updates. And there's the output of the actual upgrade. So if it had executed the upgrade at that point, we would see any packages that have been changed or updated. So that's it. That is a very brief, very simple look at how to define workflow steps within the Avantra step library, which has been introduced in version 21.11 and above. I highly recommend starting with 21.11.4. The final thing I want to show you here is, just in case you're not aware, you can also look at, I'm just going to show toolbar. So I'm going to go to docs.avantra.com. The other thing I want to show you here is all of the stuff I just looked at is available in detail within our new API documentation, which is at docs.avantra.com/API. And here you'll find information about automation actions. So those functions I use, like set details, set message, set success, and also all of the other global variables that you can use. For example, how do you call programs? How do you call SAP function modules, web services, and all that kind of stuff is all available in that detailed area of the website. So please do check that out for more information. But for now, happy coding and enjoy the new workflow engine, and thanks for watching.